Hello guys and girls, my name is Purple Hatman and welcome to a very special video. So I want to start a series soon where I recap my time reading Incredible Hulk comics, but I thought it best to do that after I tell you the story of how I got into comics in the first place. And what makes it a special story, as you can guess from the title, is that I have dyslexia. A learning difficulty that affects reading and writing comprehension. Now, like with most learning difficulties, dyslexia is best described as a scale of severity between like low, mid, and severe, and I have been described as between mid and severe, meaning there are some people out there who definitely have it worse than me, but I am still more of a sufferer than most others. It's because of this I never really enjoyed reading. It was always basically something I had to do to get through because of school. But that all changed because of the story I'm going to tell you in this video. Please leave me a like if you enjoyed this video, leave me a comment if you have anything to say, tell me about your own experience falling in love with reading, and subscribe if you want to see more comic book videos just like this in the future. But with that said, let's get into how I fell in love with reading as a dyslexic. So our story begins in the seaside town of Morecambe here in England. I was there on a day trip with my granddad visiting people from his side of the family. And while we were walking around, my granddad wanted to stop at a shop, so we found a tiny little newsagent's that was just tucked away on a random street. And it was in this shop, while my granddad was at the counter, that I looked at the magazines, and on the bottom row of the back shelf, I found this comic book cover. Now this is very important because I firmly believe if this was any other cover, I probably would be telling you a completely different story. This cover made me so interested. First of all, I saw Wolverine, his name, and I recognise him there in the background. Great. Then I thought, who the hell is Skaar, and why does the Hulk have long hair and is holding a sword? Followed by, who the hell is this skinny white guy, also holding a laser pistol? And finally, what the hell is a Daken, and why is there a hand with two Wolverine claws coming out of it? Wolverine's already at the back of the page. Who the hell is that? At the top of the page, you also had the Juggernaut in yellow letters, which I was like, the Juggernaut? As in... I'm the Juggernaut! That guy? He's in here? Okay. It was all of these things combined that made me absolutely decide I needed this comic. And without even knowing it, my granddad did one of the most important things he would ever do for me in my life. He bought me this comic. After leaving the shop and continuing to walk around the town, I opened up the comic to read what I thought was going to be the first page. I ended up reading continuously for the next 45 minutes. The only reason I stopped looking down at the comic was to cross the road. Outside of this, I was totally engrossed. I couldn't wait to turn the next page to see what happened next. I couldn't wait to read more. A normal person probably could have read this in 15 to 20 minutes, and even though it took me a lot longer, I loved every single second. For the first time in my life at the age of 14, I couldn't wait to read more. I couldn't wait to read what happened next. I couldn't wait to read it again. And it did nothing short of change my life. So this is a message to you. If you're struggling with reading, you have a learning difficulty, and something is holding you back, please don't let it stop you. Please find your own way to love reading. Now we're going to talk about the actual story from this comic, the story which started it all. So it opens up with Skaar jumping across the land, apparently on his way to fight the Hulk. But it turns out to not be the Hulk at all, and it's actually just Bruce Banner in some kind of robot suit that was featured in an old Tales of Astonish story from ages ago. And after a very brief fight, this is when we learn that Bruce Banner cannot turn into the Hulk at the moment, and that Skaar plans to kill the Hulk once he returns. But Bruce Banner tells him that this is impossible, and that when the Hulk comes back, he will kill him. No questions, no ifs, no buts, he will. So Bruce Banner offers to train Skaar to fight the Hulk. And step 1 of his training will be to fight someone nearly as strong as the Hulk himself. Enter the Juggernaut. There's a nice little moment here where Bruce Banner actually name drops the Rhino, which I actually giggled to myself about at the time, and I remember giggling about it. But eventually Skaar and the Juggernaut get into it, and this is a fantastic fight. Skaar and the Juggernaut are just giving it their all. They're bashing each other to hell, throwing each other around. Skaar has no idea how to deal with the Juggernaut's unstoppable abilities, and equally, the Juggernaut's caught off guard by Skaar's old power and moving rocks, and eventually they go flying into the sky after falling into the ground into some lava. Just crazy. This whole fight was just absolutely insane. Skaar reverts to his childlike form in order to trick the Juggernaut. It just displays everything these characters have going on, and it eventually ends with Skaar punching the Juggernaut into outer space, which is such a crazy feat of strength, and I remember sitting there thinking, Jesus, that's a bit over the top. We then switch over to Bruce Banner and Skaar, who are inside a comic book shop, and I remember thinking this was interesting back then, and I still think it's interesting now, but how would comic books work in this universe? I mean, obviously they would exist because superheroes are real, so obviously there would be books about them, and it makes sense that there would be comic books, but there'd be a mix of fiction and non-fiction, because the characters would be real, but the stories wouldn't be, or a superhero sitting down and doing, like, interviews with comic book writers so that they can get inspiration for their stories. Like, it is interesting how that would work, but anyway, the point of this is that eventually Wolverine shows up in very dramatic fashion, and he looks fantastic in this picture because you can actually see Skaar's face reflected in his claws. It is an awesome goddamn shot, and I still love it to this day. And to reward Wolverine for showing up, Skaar proceeds to punch him in the face as hard as he can and smash him into the floor. It's a very Skaar reaction and it makes a lot of sense. Skaar then jumps off to go to some mystery meeting that Banner has set up. This mystery meeting is with Wolverine's son, Daken. If you say Daken, then fine, I don't care. Again, dyslexic, probably reading it wrong, probably pronouncing it wrong, don't care. And to reward Daken for showing up in the story, Skaar immediately tries to kill him. I love how consistent Skaar is as a character. I remember thinking this back then when I first read it, but literally when Skaar meets the Juggernaut, he tries to kill him. When Skaar meets Wolverine, he tries to kill him. When Skaar meets Daken, he tries to kill him. Skaar is the definition of fight first, ask questions later, and it makes him very consistent. After this all calms down, we get this really lovely conversation between Daken and Skaar, where Daken kind of points out how they are similar. The fact that Skaar was born in the explosion that killed his mother, that Daken was ripped from his mother's womb, that Skaar was raised by monsters, that Daken was raised as an assassin, and the fact that when they both met their dads for the first time, they tried to kill them. It's a great introspection on how these two characters that seem so different could be so similar, and as a first-time reader, it was really informative, and I still love this panel to this day. Unfortunately, this all turns sour in a very big way, with Skaar and Daken starting to fight again, and there's this bit where Daken slashes Skaar across the face, and it looks so brutal. There's green blood flying everywhere, and I remember thinking at the time that it looked like his eye being black is like his eye has been gouged out. Like, I remember thinking it was so brutal, and I still do. It's such a visceral picture. Despite this, you'd think it'd be an easy win for Skaar with him being so big and so strong, but Wolverine explains that Daken has a piece of the Muramasa blade stuck in his claw, so it actually deactivates superhuman healing factors, and Skaar starts to get wrecked because he can't heal. Like, he gets stabbed so much, it is brutal. Eventually, Skaar is left in a heaping pile of his own blood on the floor, with Daken about to land the killing blow, but that's when Bruce Banner steps in. And although I didn't realise it at the time, this was going to be really important for the future Hulk stories going forward, because Bruce tells us the story of part of his childhood trauma. So he tells the story of how his father killed his mother, how years later at her gravesite he tried to kill him, and how Bruce finally fought back and killed him by cracking his head over a gravestone as he slipped. This really says a lot about Bruce Banner, because even with the Hulk not in his life, he still views himself as a danger to his friends, his family, the people he loves. He views himself as a killer. And he even talks about the idea that maybe the Hulk emerged in order to protect the rest of the world from Bruce. Eventually, the two pairs all end up going their separate ways, and it's quite funny because Bruce Banner and Wolverine both remark that, well, at least we're not as crazy as the other guys, when they're both as crazy as each other, I think, and normal family relationships are not really on the cards for either of these pairs. But the most important thing to come out of maybe this entire story comes right at the end, when it's revealed to us that someone has been watching all of these events unfold from afar, and this person is revealed to be the leader, which I only recognised from the animated TV show in the 90s, but I still immediately recognised him, and it was a major setup for the future stories, and if I'd have known back then how big of a part he was going to play, I'd have been more excited than I already was. And that was the end of my first Hulk story. Now, there was an extra story in this issue, which was about Hank Pym's Mighty Avengers team fighting an Inhuman known as the Unspoken. And there's only a few things to say about it, really. I mean, it was a good introduction at the time that there isn't just one Avengers team going on, that all the superhero teams are kind of doing their own thing, there are multiple Avengers teams, that it's a big world and there's a lot going on. There were a couple of standout moments from the story that I can remember enjoying at the time. So there's this gas kind of going through, reducing all the heroes to alpha primitives, so they're kind of just basic cavemen that just go around attacking the other Avengers that haven't been affected. And there's a nice moment where Radioactive Man and Quicksilver are the only two that haven't been affected by the gas, both using their own methods to get around it. Radioactive Man creates a force field, and Quicksilver spins really fast in a circle and just pushes the gas away by creating a little, wind tunnel of himself. It was really quite funny. And there's also a moment where Quicksilver is talking to one of the affected people by this alpha primitive thing called US Agent, who was a character I knew nothing about at the time. And he says basically, even though he's been reduced to like a caveman-like simple state, on like a genetic level, he's been reduced to an absolute neurological dead zone, that there's still a more basic person inside of him. And he says, if you don't do what I say, the commies win. And this guy just like instantly flips sides and starts doing what Quicksilver says, and it's just so funny being like, oh my god, he's so much of a patriot, it's more than genetic coding. It's just like such a stupid moment. And that is the end of the story, but obviously it was only the beginning of mine. Since that day, I have spent hundreds of hours of my life reading, and it is now one of my favourite things to do with my time. I'm the guy in my friendship group that when people see a new Marvel movie and they want to know something about a character, I'm usually the person that they ask. And it's great to have those conversations with people, it's great to have this hobby. I go to Comic-Cons regularly. Reading has become an essential part of my life, and to think that it all started on that one day with that one book on the back shelf. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was somewhat inspirational and inspires you to find your own way to love reading, and I hope you very much enjoyed. Please leave me a like and a comment if you did, subscribe if you want to see future videos, and that is it. I have been Purple Hat Man, you have been a great audience, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye bye.